11:46 a.m.
This is Detective DeCoster of the Fairfax County Police Department. I'm trying to get in touch with Victor. Give me a call at 703-246-7858, or anybody getting this message can call me back and can talk about the situation. Thank you.
On that day, at around 3:30 p.m., I was headed to lecture at UVA, only to discover two police officers speaking to my professor. Victor Zheng is a tall Asian male that usually sits in the front row of the classroom, said my professor, as he began describing me to an African-American police officer. The situation that Detective DeCoster was referring to was that he obtained 2 warrants for my arrest, one for rape and the other one for abduction with intent to defile. I was then escorted outside by these 2 officers and arrested in the parking lot outside of Wilson Hall. I'm going to explain how I was falsely accused. I'm going to explain how my ex-girlfriend, her friend, Hassan Karam, and Detective DeCoster were able to cause so much harm despite the fact that so much evidence existed to prove my innocence. I will explain what should have not happened in this video and how all of that transpired. Let's go back to the beginning. My name is Victor Zheng and I grew up in McLean, Virginia, and I attended McLean High School. I then attended the University of Virginia, where I graduated with a double major in Chinese and history. After graduation, I worked for a year and a half in China, primarily doing English teaching and media work. The setting of this story takes place in Northern Virginia for the most part. Let's go back to October of 2011. I began dating a classmate of mine that I met in our AP psychology class. I was a senior at the time, and our relationship started off rather organically. We met because we were both cramming for a routine unit test, and then we began dating on October 29th, 2011. Like most relationships, we had our issues, and it eventually dissolved into a rather toxic breakup. We called each other names, we weren't really that nice to each other, and there was a lot of breaking up and getting back together. I would say that our romantic relationship roughly ended around April of 2013. As much as I loved her during the relationship, I was truly naive when I made the determination to stay with her, even after she and her parents told me about her borderline personality disorder diagnosis, a mental illness marked by an ongoing pattern of varying moods, self-image, and behavior. These symptoms often result in impulsive actions and problems in relationships. I did not realize the severity of the symptoms and how much that would impact me and impact our relationship until I was too deep in. I was a year above her. When I was a senior, she was a junior. So when I graduated, I was going to college away from McLean, away from Northern Virginia, and that really frustrated her. And what is typical of someone with borderline personality disorder, they extremely fear being abandoned. So she accused me of abandoning her. She accused me of betraying her. She hated the idea of handling a long-distance relationship. We tried, but it turned into a lot of insecurity and blaming. She would go on to accuse me of cheating on her with a plethora of different people. A list that includes mutual friends, a list that even includes my roommates and my professors. Her anger towards me only intensified, and she would go on to blame me for various aspects of her life. She would blame me for her academic frustrations, her frustrations with athletics, her frustrations with her family. Everything seemed to be my fault when I was dating this woman. When we finally ended the relationship, it was very obvious that she continued to harbor these frustrations towards me. I do recognize that I was not the best boyfriend. Despite the fact that I was aware of the borderline personality diagnosis, I still feel like I could have been more supportive and more sympathetic. I did call her names, I did get frustrated with her, but I still tried my best given the situation. I even consulted psychological experts on how to handle a relationship with someone who has borderline personality disorder. Thinking back on it, I should have ended the relationship sooner rather than later, so I could have minimized the emotional damages to the both of us. After we broke up, our contact was at a minimal. We would occasionally message each other, but there would still be bitterness, there would still be frustrations. After barely contacting each other for about 2 months, my ex-girlfriend suddenly calls me in the middle of July during one of my summer classes at the Northern Virginia Community College. We haven't talked for probably about 2 months, maybe a month and a half. So this was very sudden. And she really said that she needed to talk.
This is a controlled phone call on July 18th, 2013, approximately 13:20 hours between me and Victor. Okay, this goes in your ear. Don't dial it yet. Okay, go ahead. Hello?
Hey, this is...
Yeah, what's up?
Is now good?
Now? No, it's not exactly the best time. When are you free again?
I have to I don't think I'll be free for a while, so this is probably the only time. Like, you forced me to have sex with you and all that, and you, like, pushed me down. Like, I was really scared. Like, why would you do that, you know?
We didn't have sex.
Yeah, we did.
Last spring? We haven't had sex since November.
At your house? Do you remember that? Like, I don't want to go into... I just...
Are you talking about are you talking about high school, your junior year, my senior year?
No, well, including that but I'm talking about... Yes. See, junior year, spring. And you kind of pushed me on the floor. I don't want to go into this, but I
don't remember the incident. I don't remember ever forcing you to have sex with me.
Okay, I just don't want to go into this because I started, you know, seeing somebody like asking, like, my counselor, and he said if you want to move forward into friendship and all that, you gotta take this up with him and let him know how you feel. So I'm doing that. I'm going back.
So are you saying that I raped you?
I'm saying because of the things that happened in the past, because of what you did, it really, like, momentarily, especially, it had an impact on me. But then there are times when I think back, when I think about, you know, chances of us going forward, and I just need to move past this, you know, like, it may not seem a big deal to you, but it is a very, I don't know, it's a big deal for me because of what happened.
I know the kind of impact I made on you, but I never raped you.
Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
can you give me a few minutes? Because I'm in a class right now, okay?
Please, I need to talk. No, I can't. We need to talk about this now. Can you, like, step out or something?
I've been out for a while. It's almost over. Let me go back, get my stuff, and can I call you?
It's either now, okay. It's either now or I'm not. I just can't talk to you again. Like, it's either now or...
Can you stay on the line and let me just get my stuff?
I can stay on the line.
Yes. Let me just walk in and get my stuff out, okay?
Okay. That day when I was in your room, okay, this is the one incident, okay? You told me you wanted to talk or whatever. I went to your room. At some point I felt uncomfortable, so I wanted to leave. Like, do you remember, like, me trying to leave, and then you just got really angry, and, you know, I could understand, like, the anger where it stemmed from, but then why did you, like, have to, you know, put your hand just, you know, and, like, push me down on the floor? Like, I was really scared.
Were we dating at the time?
No, I don't think so. I think that was the whole point of the conversation, because we were considering, like, going into, you know, trying it. That was, like, the whole point of, like, you asking me to go, and I was, like, up for it. That was the whole point of that conversation that day.
And this is spring of 2012? Spring of 2012 during tennis season when you were a junior and I was a senior.
It was during spring, and I remember the exact incident, you know, how it went down. If you really want me to go into detail, I can. But how can you not remember, like...
Give me the chronology. Was it during tennis season? Did you have, like, a tennis match that day?
I did not have a tennis match that day.
Why are you so adamant about me trying to get to admit something?
Because I need this sense of closure, you know? Like, you don't understand how many sleepless nights I have. Like, are you sorry at all?
When the phone call ended, I was at a loss for words. I just didn't know what happened. I didn't know what just happened. So I was frustrated, I was confused, I wanted to talk to her, I wanted to see what was going on in her mind, I wanted to know why she felt this way. I knew that she was not in a good place and that she needed a lot of emotional support, so I tried calling her back. And when I called her back, an adult man picked up the phone and introduced himself as Fairfax County Detective DeCoster. I was scared, I was freaked out. When the detective answered my phone call, I knew what just happened. I knew that my ex actually did falsely accuse me of something. My ex did make vague threats to me in the past, but as crazy as this sounds, I got used to her extreme language and vernacular. I got used to getting threatened by her. I just assumed that this was a part of her diagnosis, just a part of who she was, and that this was something she could overcome, and she could overcome these frustrations. But I didn't think that she would actually falsely accuse me. Just from the telephone sting, I only knew that my ex was trying to accuse me of some form of rape or sexual assault. But I didn't know any of the details, and she didn't share any of the details of the story with me. Detective DeCoster called me back on my cell phone, and he demanded me to cooperate. He told me that he would arrest me on a slew of charges if I did not cooperate. And as a 20-year-old in college, I was scared beyond imagination. Detective DeCoster instructed me to appear for an interview at the Fairfax County Police Station the next day. Despite how I felt at the moment, I was very shaken up, but I just assumed that, okay, since I'm completely innocent, I have nothing to fear. I can tell my side of the story, and it should be okay. That's what I thought at the time.
You invited her to your house, you told her nobody was home, and she gets there and there's nobody there. And you push her on the floor beside your bed, between the dresser and the bed. You push her down on the floor, you get on top of her, you hold her arms down where she can't move.
This never happened.
And then you tell her to get up, and she's not moving quick enough for you, so you grab her. She then shoves you off, and she stands up on her own, and she tries to walk past you. And you don't let her. You're standing in her way. She tells you to get out of her way. She's crying. She's saying to let her go, but you don't get out of her way. You then push her down on the bed and sexually assault her. That's the story as she tells it. Maybe in your family's culture, and I understand it, women are kind of looked at as second-class citizens or something like that in your eyes. I don't know.
But it's just, I would never push her on the floor, and then I would never have, I'm not degenerate enough to push her on the floor and then put her on my bed and then have sex with her.
I think that you were angry. I think that you got caught up in the heat of the moment. Maybe you didn't even mean to push her onto the floor. Maybe you were trying to get her to the bed, but she ended up on the floor. But then what I don't get is, as she describes it, you're then holding her arm. You're on top of her and you're holding her arms just for a second, but then you get up off of her. To me, that concerns me a little, like, who are you? Because I think that you were aiming for the bed when you pushed her, but she ended up on the floor. You jump down on her, you grab her arms, you're still angry for whatever drama was going on in your relationship at that point, but then you kind of awoke and you got up off of her and you told her to get up, but she wasn't moving fast enough, and you grab her arm and she's able to pull her arm away and she gets up on her own. She tries to walk by you to leave your room, but you're standing in her way. You're a big, tough guy, and she's not able to get by you. Even though she's crying, she's saying stop and to let me go. You're not getting out of her way. And then she says with one hand you kind of push her onto the bed and she ends up on the bed. And then you have sex with her. If you're going to minimize, leave things out, or lie, I don't want to hear it. Okay? Mm-hmm. Because at the end of this, or at some point during this, I'm going to ask you if you're willing to take a lie detector test. Polygraph.
Yeah.
I want to know if what you're telling me is true. Said she'd be willing to take a polygraph. So again, if you leave things out, if you minimize or if you lie, I just don't want to hear it. You're wasting my time.
May I ask if I could take a polygraph regarding that event when she said I pushed her on the floor? Because
again, we use that as a tool to help make decisions. We can deal with that at some point.
But it's just, she has a personality disorder. At first I thought I could handle it. I can't. I realized I can't. And
So now you're saying she has a personality disorder?
She does.
Like what?
Borderline personality disorder.
According to who?
According to her and her mom. That's what they've told me.
Do you suffer from anything?
No.
You sure?
I don't have a personality disorder. No.
Really?
I was interrogated for about an hour and a half, and Detective DeCoster, it just seemed like he was just trying to push a false confession out of me. Towards the end of the interview, this is what the detective had to say to me.
You made it worse. I didn't think you'd do that. I thought you kind of saw the light yesterday, and you're going to come in here and be a gentleman, and you're going to handle your business, and you're smart enough. I thought, well, here's this guy who's going to UVA. He's got to be smart enough to realize what his situation is, and he has no choice but to clean this up. You haven't cleaned up shit. You made it worse.
I'm not going to admit to something that I did not do.
I tried my best to cooperate with the detective. I tried my best to answer his questions, but it was just very obvious that he wanted me to confess to something that I did not do. After I left the police station that day, I consulted a lawyer, and what the lawyer said to me was that essentially if an arrest was not made within a week or two, then nothing would happen, most likely. Despite how aggressive Detective DeCoster was with me, I just assumed that, okay, perhaps he will investigate this a little bit further, and then he will discover that this is just a frivolous accusation, and this would all be over. How wrong I was.
So, your best guess would be in March of 2012.
Best guess, but it's a guess.
Again, this is spring of 2012. From then until this year, July of this year, when you reported this, did you have any other kind of intimate contact with him, any kind of sex of any sort after this assault, between that and the time that you reported this?
No sex.
No sex. But did you see him? Did you have contact with him?
He would try to get into contact with me online and just show up after school.
You said no sex. I don't want to read into it, but somebody else could. What do you mean by that? Okay, there was no sex, but was there something else? Was there kissing or touching? Or?
As in, nothing physical.
And who are the people that you told?
Names. Amy Judd and Hassan Quran.
Is Hassan just a friend, a boyfriend, something else? He's just a friend. There's never been anything intimate between you guys?
No.
Why'd you have to think about it like that?
Because at one point, we mutually liked each other, but nothing really happened. So yeah, I just really want something else. I don't know.
Meaning what?
I just there is a weight lifted, but at the same time, it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Just that he's that he doesn't know what he did, first of all, and the impact, not even that particular incident, but all the way leading up to that, and then after that, it's like he's able to live his own life freely, and I'm here still at this point, going back to that day. I just don't, it is what it is, so.
I understand what you're saying, and that's part of why, we do what we do, is victims deserve their justice. Interview with you is, for the most part, complete. Interview with him, for the most part, is complete. I might entertain a follow-up interview with him, although he came across as sort of a smartass during the interview in the beginning, and I don't know that I will afford him the opportunity. But
I will annotate a comment on what she said in the interview later on, but at the moment, I'm going to show you what Hassan had to say.
That was a phone interview with Hassan Karam in support of the case. Today's date is September 19, 2013, approximately 2:10 in the afternoon.
She texted me saying, can I give her a ride? And I wasn't doing anything at the time. So I picked her up from school, and apparently she was running away from something, but she was panting when I picked her up. And she's like, can you just drive me somewhere? And so I drove her to a parking lot behind our old school, the middle school. And I asked her what happened because she was crying, and she told me that her ex-boyfriend Victor forced her to come with her, coerced her to come to his house. And she's always very reluctant to go to his house, but he told her apparently that his mom would be home and nothing funny would happen. And because he goes to Virginia Tech, and so he wasn't around as much, I really begged her go call the police and tell her parents. And by the time the conversation was done, I dropped her off at her house, and she said that to tell her parents to file a police report. I thought she did that like in April or March or something, around that date. I don't remember the month specifically.
Let me ask you, if it got to a point where we were going to end up going to court over this, would you be willing to testify and basically just say what you just told me? If need be, I don't know that it'll get to that, but if need be, is that something you can do?
Depends on what point and how it happens, because I really want to focus on my studies, and the court case would take place in McLean or in the Nova region.
Yeah, in Fairfax.
Yeah, I don't know if I can make the trip for one court case, especially if school's going on.
Well,
I really don't. I hate to do this to her. I really do. I thought, yeah.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, but you're obviously not familiar with the court process here. No offense, but if we were to pursue arresting him, then it could be a year before this thing goes to trial, or it could be in the summertime to where it doesn't even impact your school anyway.
Yeah, I guess then it comes to that, then. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I don't know that it'll come to that, but I just wanted to see what your position might be on it. So, you know, we'll figure that out. And if I need to get back in touch with you, I will. And you know how to, reach me in case you have any questions.
About a week before my arrest, I remember very clearly that I got a call from Detective DeCoster. If I had to guess the time, well, it's not really a guess because I remember very clearly that it was a Thursday, so it must have been September 26th of 2013, around 5 p.m. It's been 3 months since I last talked to the detective, so he's calling me, asking me how I'm doing and so forth. So why is he checking up on me? I have no idea what's going on. And then he begins to taunt me. He tells me that he has a very strong witness who is willing to testify against me. In my mind, that doesn't make any sense. First of all, who is watching my ex-girlfriend and I have sex? 2, it's who would be willing to lie on her behalf. It was just not fathomable. I couldn't fathom anything like that happening. So I just figured this was just some odd police intimidation tactic to compel me to confess, because after that, he kept asking me to confess to the supposed rape, to the supposed crime. He would tell me that, we all know that you raped her, Victor. That's what he said to me. And I kept denying it, and I told him that I did not do this, that she is lying, and this time I was more stern, much more stern than I was when he interviewed me. I told him that I have plenty of evidence to prove that I'm innocent, and I told him that I'm willing to take a polygraph test, as he told me that he would administer one for me, and I asked him if my ex-girlfriend took a polygraph test, and I asked him if the witness took a polygraph test, and I asked him, did you follow up on that borderline personality diagnosis? DeCoster just got angry, he shouted at me, told me to shut up, and told me to explain it in court. He kept taunting me, telling me that I would see the bottom of a jail cell and that I would be arrested soon. He even told me that he had arrest warrants in his hands and that my arrest was imminent. I just figured that this is all intimidation tactics, none of it was true. Last, he told me that deputies would come pick me up and arrest me in front of my entire community. I just had enough of him. So I hung up the phone and I didn't wait to listen to what he had to say. And I wasn't arrested that day or the next, so I figured it was an empty threat. For now. I remember being at Clark Library, printing materials I needed for a class that day. Then I get a call from a new number, a number I don't recognize. And it's still Detective DeCoster. This time, it was a lot more eerie because he sounded giddy. He sounded happy. He asked me how I was doing. And then he said, this time, he actually had warrants for my arrest. 2 of them. One was a charge for rape. The second one was a charge for abduction with intent to defile. And then he was taunting me again, telling me it's over. And then he asks me again to confess, that I have one more chance to confess. This has got to be some sort of odd intimidation tactic or something. So I hung up on him again. I just figured and hoped that this would be an empty threat. It wasn't. I would go on to spend 5 nights and 6 days in jail. Because of the seriousness of the charges, there was a realistic possibility that I would not be granted bail. And even worse, the chance that I would spend the rest of my life in prison for a crime I did not commit. In Virginia, and probably in most places, rape and abduction carry life sentences. I was first brought to the Charlottesville Albemarle Regional Jail because it was the closest jail nearby. It was explained to me that I would then be transported to Fairfax to have my bail hearing or bond hearing, because that's where the case takes place, that's where the case was reported. At this point, Dean of Students Alan Groves of the University of Virginia sent me a letter stating that I'd been placed on an interim suspension from the University of Virginia, basically meaning that I was not allowed to go back to grounds. From the sounds of the letter, it seems like they weren't expecting me to get out of jail. And also, it seems like they weren't expecting me to come back as a student. I was eventually picked up at the Charlottesville-Albemarle Regional Jail by Fairfax deputies and then transported to the Fairfax Adult Detention Center, where I finally got to meet my lawyer. I tried my best to explain everything that was going on, because at this point, I did not know what the complainant story was. I did not know about Hassan. I did not know the details like I do now. The only thing I knew was that the warrant said that the crime happened between March 1st and June 1st of 2012. So I just did my best to explain how this could not have happened, explain the context of our relationship, explain that the March 1st of June 1st time frame doesn't make sense because we were dating. We actually were probably in a honeymoon phase during that point of time. I was after school every day, and I just don't know how this could have happened unless it somehow happened at school or something like that. But at that point, and I'll get into the details later, I just did not know how to refute the case because I just did not know what her story was. My lawyer explained to me that we would have a bond hearing or bail hearing the next day. This will determine if I'm allowed to stay out of jail during the duration of my case. My lawyer also explained that because of how serious the charges are, that the Commonwealth and Detective DeCoster will do their best to keep me in jail. In other words, Detective DeCoster and the Commonwealth's attorney are supposed to be at the bond hearing the next day so that they can argue against granting me bail. When I showed up at the bail hearing in my green jumpsuit, I didn't know what to expect, because I knew that getting out of jail was not a guarantee. And I was very nervous. I didn't know what the Commonwealth attorney might say. I didn't know what Detective DeCoster might say, but I mentally tried to prepare myself. Just tried to prepare myself to listen to horrible lies about me spat out by the Commonwealth's attorney or the detective. The next day at the bail hearing, Detective DeCoster was nowhere to be found. And I remember how awkward it was for the Commonwealth's attorney. The Commonwealth's attorney stated that at the moment, she had no information on the case and could not get in touch with the detective. The Commonwealth actually offered no resistance to my bail, and I was granted bond. My lawyer then explained to me that the Commonwealth's attorney even tried to call the detective before the bail hearing, but could not reach him. The judge then set the preliminary hearing for Friday, November 15th, 2013. I want to highlight a few major points about the complainant's case before I present my own evidence to refute the story that she and Hassan have conjured up. My ex-girlfriend and Hassan's story chronologically deviate from each other by over a year, just depending on when you start, because my ex says it was sometime between March 1st and June 1st of 2012, and Hassan seems to be saying that it was sometime in March or April of 2013. According to Hassan's version of events, I was a college freshman. So how could I be at college and university and be back in the Northern Virginia area for this to even happen? Of course, they might say, okay, I was back for spring break or something like that. But then you would think that one of the three, Hassan, the detective, my ex-girlfriend, could have narrowed that down for the warrant. According to the complainant, she actually met Hassan at the end of 2012, around December. So according to my ex-girlfriend's time frame, this happened before she even met Hassan. So how could Hassan be her witness if the two were not even aware of each other's existence? Please stay tuned for part 2 to see how I respond to the charges after I know what the complainant's case is.